a lot of people thought when they were having all that trouble, the Russians were having all that trouble with Prigozhin and the Wagner group, that Putin was vulnerable and was likely to be overthrown. And what would happen is a peace-loving leader would replace Putin. I made 2 points at the time, and I would make those same 2 points now. Number one, he's not likely to be overthrown. He was not likely then to be overthrown. And I think, as long as his health holds up, I think he will remain in power. My second point is, if he doesn't remain in power and he's replaced, I would bet a lot of money that his replacement will be more hawkish and more hardline than Putin is. I actually think one could argue that Putin was too trusting of the West before the war started. And number two, I think one could argue that he has not waged the war against Ukraine as vigorously as one might have expected. He was slow to mobilize the nation for war, and he has pursued a limited war in all sorts of ways. The Israelis, for example, have killed more civilians in Gaza in 1 month than the Russians have killed over 18 months in Ukraine. The idea that Vladimir Putin is waging a punishment campaign and killing on purpose large numbers of civilians is simply not true. All of this is to say that I would imagine that if Putin leaves office and someone else comes in to replace him, that someone else will be at least, if not more hardline than him in terms of waging the war, and certainly will not trust the West any more than he has.
By way of advice, let me ask you, if I were to have a conversation, interview Vladimir Putin and Zelensky individually, what should I ask them? If you, me, and Vladimir Putin are having a chat, what are good ideas to explore? What are good questions to ask? What are good things to say on or off the mic, once again, that could potentially even slightly lessen the amount of suffering in the world caused by this war?
Oh, I think if you get an interview with Vladimir Putin, there's just all sorts of questions you could ask him. And my sense is that Putin is a straight shooter. He's also very knowledgeable about history, and he has simple theories in his head about how the world works. And I think he would level with you, and all you would have to do is just, figure out what all the right questions are. And that would not be hard to do, right? You could ask him, why was he so foolish? This is for example, why was he so foolish as to trust Poroshenko, Hollande, and Merkel in the Minsk Accords? Why, after his famous talk at Munich in 2007, where he made it clear that he was so unhappy with the West, did he continue to, in a very important way, trust the West? Why didn't he mobilize the Russian military before late September 2022? Once the negotiations that we were talking about before involving Istanbul and Naftali Bennett, once they broke down, why didn't he immediately mobilize more of the Russian population to fight the war? Just all sorts of questions like that. And then you could ask him questions about, where he sees this one headed. What's the best strategy for Russia if the Ukrainians will not agree to neutrality, right? People like John Mearsheimer say you'll probably take close to half of Ukraine. Is that true? Does it make sense to take Odessa?
And John Mearsheimer also has questions about China. Your future relationships with China.
Yeah. I mean, one really important question that I would ask him is if the United States had basically not driven you into the arms of the Chinese, if there had been no war over Ukraine, and the United States had and its European allies had gone to considerable lengths to create some sort of security architecture in Europe that resulted in you, Vladimir Putin, having good relations with Ukraine.